For What's Hot, we talk about stories that have all of us talking.
We're joined today by Barb Bartlein from the People Pro. Jeff Wagner back with us as well. Heroin use. It's just exploded over the last 10 years. Deaths from this drug are up 600% in Milwaukee County. But a drug called ibogaine could be a potential cure. It is a hallucinogenic drug that comes from a plant in Africa. It is said to greatly reduce withdrawal symptoms, also drug cravings. The problem is it's not legal in the U.S. Should it be legalized? Right now, people are going to Mexico and Canada. There are clinics that are set up for these treatments. And that's where they're using ibogaine.
Okay.
Absolutely, it should be legalized. You know, heroin addiction is a terminal disease, and anything that we could possibly do that could help heroin addicts overcome that addiction would be beneficial. There's only 3 outcomes to heroin addiction, and that is insanity, death, or recovery. And I think we need to pull any tools out of the toolbox we possibly can to pursue recovery.
But here's the problem, Barb. Nobody argues with that. What they argue with is this particular drug, which is extremely untested, might even be worse. This might be a situation where the quote-unquote cure is worse than the disease. Obviously, you want to look at this. I think the FDA and the American Medical Association, you'll want to study it to make sure it's safe. You're right, this is a problem. I've had issues all along. Right now, what they do is they use methadone, and there's a lot of people that would argue that all you're doing is trading one addiction for another. I'm all in favor of doing this, but just every time there's some cure, quote unquote, doesn't mean you want to necessarily expose people to it.
The risk is heart failure. And I know one of the warnings is, yes, if you are going to do this in a different country, you need to go to clinics that are medically staffed. There is a doctor on hand. It's not take the dose, go to a hotel, and then come back for your morning checkup. The place that we looked at, Ibogaine University in Mexico, doing it for about 4 years, never had a fatality.
Yeah, and you know, enough other countries are using it that couldn't we take a look at some of their experience, as you mentioned, Courtney, the death rates and what's happened, to get some kind of idea of the safety and efficacy here. At the very least, I think it should be a treatment option offered to people that are willing to take the risk.
Well, again, I'm not arguing with that. I just think you got to go real careful. I have no disagreement with the idea that this is an epidemic. Matter of fact, I'm emceeing an event in Washington County at the West Bend High School tonight where they're talking about how big and bad a problem this is and how people can be aware of it. And anything that gets people off of heroin, I'm all in favor of. I just think with these new drugs, you got to go slow to make sure, like I say, the cure isn't worse than the disease.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Coming up next, we're revealing the viewer's choice topic of the day.
And Brian Goddard back with another look at a beautiful forecast. We're warm and viewer's choice topic of the day.
Again, we're joined by Barb Bartlein and Jeff Wagner of 620 WTMJ. Well, a school assignment has a lot of people outraged. 8th graders in Southern California School District were assigned to write an essay explaining whether the Holocaust really happened. That
assignment sparked death threats against the district spokesperson and interim superintendent. What? That's all I have is what? Whether or not it really happened?
Well, I mean, look, I think it was an exercise in critical thinking, and I think they could have perhaps chosen a different topic. At the same time, I mean, they weren't urging the students to argue that the Holocaust did not happen. The fact is there are Holocaust deniers that are out there. Now, I think they're wacky, but they're out there. So it was an exercise in critical thinking. They didn't say, hey, you have to argue it didn't happen. They just said, hey, write an essay in. So could they have chosen a different topic? Yes. Was this necessarily something that marked all this outrage? I'm not sure.
You can see why people were upset by it. I mean, nothing warrants death threats, but upset by it.
Yeah, the death threats were certainly out of line, but this is really a sensitive hotspot for many people because, as you mentioned, Jeff, there's quite a few people that say it never occurred. And in fact, this is quite a big movement in Europe and very popular among the neo-Nazis that the Holocaust never existed. So it very much is a point of sensitivity for many, many people. And I can see why people were upset. You know, I think a better assignment would have been to investigate the people that were saying it never existed and have the students write about that if they wanted to approach the subject.
Yeah, except my guess is 100% of the students would have, it's not like they were signed and said, you have to argue that the Holocaust didn't happen. My guess is 100% of the students would have knocked down all these wacko theories that say that it didn't. So, I mean, I think
that would have been the hope.
Right, that would have been the hope. Now, maybe it wouldn't have turned out that way, but that would have been the hope, yeah.
All right, it is time now for our lightning round.
So when you're in public and you start to feel alone, put your hands behind your head, step away from the phone. You don't need to stare at your menu or at your contact list. Just talk to one another. Learn to coexist.
I'm so afraid my children are not going to know how to coexist. This video called Look Up, it highlights just how much online social media and texting has taken over our lives. You know, it definitely in the younger generation, that's all they do.
I don't even know it's just the younger generation. It just seems becoming the thing to do. I mean, sometimes I'll text my son who's sitting right across from me at dinner time, just to kid him. I'm like, hey, how's it going? You know, I mean, it's because it's like, can we have a conversation here?
We've had family gatherings where everybody is sitting, I mean, we don't even realize it, but then we look around and everybody is sitting on their smartphone. And I do think we're encountering the loss of the human moment with all the technology where people aren't personally connected, and I think there's repercussions for society.
One of the I wish I had thought of this. I didn't, but one of the great things is there's this game out there. You go out to dinner with a bunch of people. Everybody puts their cell phone in the middle of the table. The first person who has to answer it during the course of the dinner has got to pick up the tab. Oh. That will encourage conversation.
I think it's, you know, it's just another layer to parenting is to, you know, you have to battle kids with their devices. It's not allowed at the dinner table. It's not allowed when we're spending family time together, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, having said that, Courtney and Charles, for the last however many years, you guys have been telling me I need to get more plugged in. You need to be on this different thing. You need to be on that different thing.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I mean,
but you have to temper it. I mean, that's the lesson.
Yeah, I mean, in so many ways it's come in handy. In other ways, you're just like, you get so frustrated by it.
It's overwhelming. You're always plugged in.
Right. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, not to date myself, but when we first got TV and it was all the rage and everybody watched TV 24 hours a day. Well, it wasn't even on 24, but you know, I think it's learning how to do things in moderation.
I think so. We're going to leave it at that. The What's Hot discussion continues online. Find that page at tmj4.com/hot.